Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode, or rather episodes of Teen Wolf, as well as the latest episode of Twin Peaks. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows that I'm talking about. So, for example, if you wanted to hear what I had to say about this week's episodes of Teen Wolf, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Twin Peaks. But the first thing we're going to talk about is this week's episode of Teen Wolves. And as you know, there were 2 episodes of Teen Wolf, hence why I keep referring to episodes of Teen Wolf. Very fantastic episodes, which set up some very interesting things. Obviously, a lot of stuff, you know, I'm sure me as well as other people have kind of already figured things out, like what this thing, like how this thing operates with fear and everything. And the fact is, the more people are here, the stronger it gets. But a lot of interesting things went down. I'll kind of break down. Like, for example, the beginning of like the first episode, you had this thing. Like, I forgot, like, its name is, like, Anouk Ite or something like that. Basically, its name ended up being translated as Double Face or whatever. Basically, this thing ended up spitting the spiders out onto, like, the faceless corpse, and then the body it was possessed in, that kid, he ended up passing out. So, which begs the question, I thought the faceless body was his, so it really did just possess his body. Then it's like, is this faceless thing its real form? Because later on, Deaton popped up. I mean, which is kind of interesting. I haven't seen him for a while. I think the last time you seen Deaton was... It had to be roughly... I think the last time he popped up was like when he got kidnapped by Malia's mom. That had to be like season 4, wasn't it? I think it was. Nevertheless, he showed up and he ended up finding like a kind of stone slab inside of the cell that the other hellhound came out of. And ended up finding out about this thing. So I'm guessing that's its real form because it is a shapeshifter. So maybe that's what it originally looks like, but it takes on, or maybe that's not its real form. Maybe it picked a form that would disturb most people, you know, amplify the like fear, you know, associated with it. I don't know. The question is, why didn't Melissa and the others find that kid's body? So maybe it's dual occupying. Maybe it stashes its body somewhere else and then comes. I don't know. Like maybe it's stashed the body it had possessed somewhere else or something like that. I don't know. But a big part of these episodes is amplifying that fear. Like the fact is Liam having to deal with it, Nolan, as well as other people on the lacrosse team, even people in the school are like being like, oh, we're going to sell you out. We're going to show people what you are to kind of amplify the fear even more. And even going as far as like beating Liam up, but Liam keeps his calm. But to kind of show you just how escalated things are. There's even a teacher, like the teacher that was kind of sticking up for Liam a little bit in the episode, being like, okay, who's going to be Liam's lab partner? It's like, oh, no one? Yeah, you're all going to fail if no one helps out. So that same teacher is like, oh, I guess we'll let things handle. Like, I guess she saw what was happening and she kind of felt it seemed like she might have been on his side, but I guess now that she heard all the rumors, she's just like, oh, we'll just let them handle it. But Liam wasn't going to expose himself. And it's kind of interesting because Mason later on goes, you did that specifically, not just for the fact of not wanting to expose yourself, but you also did it specifically because you blame yourself on what happened, you know, to Brett and Lori. And you were, you know, because what ended up happening, like him exposing himself at the end, he blamed himself for that because Scott was telling him, like, hey, you need to go because we need to save people, because if you don't go, people might die, you know? So you could just argue that like Liam was trying to make up for his mistake, his main reason for doing it. But I like the whole comparison of like, hey, you gotta go out there and be Clark Kent, you know? It's like, don't let anyone figure out that you're really Superman, essentially. So, but it's crazy when you see that escalation of like so many people. And luckily, if it wasn't for Coach, things would have been drastically different. Coach jumped in and was like, what the hell are you doing? Get out of here, you savages. Like basically like, you guys disgust me, telling all the kids to leave and stuff. And I guess on some level, I think the coach knows. After being around Beacon Hills for a while, he probably, much like everyone else, has figured things out. But it's like, it doesn't matter to him. You show him kind of helping Liam up and everything. So it just sucks. And just to kind of show you like how far Nolan's going too. Like the fact is, Corey was hidden with Liam and he sprayed something and revealed Corey and Liam. So it's like either that thing is like educated him even more in supernatural things, or he does it himself. I mean, we do see that well, it might actually be Monroe, the counselor, because that's how Liam ended up figuring her out, because she had the claw marks and she had books about the supernatural afterlife and stuff like that, and that's when Liam figured her out. So Because I guess because she was asking Lima, oh, who's causing you problems? He knew that if he had said anything, she would have gone to them and recruited them for this whole thing. Because it seems like this Gerard kind of places it like he's like, oh, I'm only an advisor in this whole situation. She's the main one behind this, and because it's so sad because like Scott is trying to avoid a war. That's what the main part. This and the second episode is all about avoiding a war, not trying to give into it. It's like we can find another solution for this. But even like Argent's kind of like, nah, because Gerard, he knows he talked to his dad, and his dad wants genocide. He wants them all wiped out. He's telling Scott and them to run. But even when Scott was like, okay, we'll leave Beacon Hills, Monroe was like, we'll follow you anyway. It's like, what, you want us dead? Like, we have no personal event. Why do you have a problem with us? And I figured as much. Like I said it before, her situation had to be like she had to be attacked by something supernatural. Did not think it was actually going to be something so well connected within the show. And I think this gives the creators and the people behind the show like so much credit of like weaving this entire story to basically be. I'm gonna make another comparison. It's kind of similar to how in Arrow, like most recently, the Prometheus situation. Prometheus was kind of born from Oliver's actions. Well, Monroe, as well as everyone that's part of her group, was born from Scott's and them's action. She was one of the people that was attacked by the beast, but she kept herself covered by bodies to pretend like she was okay. And then on top of that, to have like Scott and them and Royalist Parish dealt with for fighting the beast, but Scott never bothered to look and see if anyone was okay. Like, the only person that found her ended up being Stilinski, and it's sad that she blames him for that, because it's like, oh, you were so concerned, you're only worried about it now because the people you care about are being affected by it. And it's like to me, I look at that like, obviously it's the whole monster thing, the double face thing, feeding into all this fear and everything, but at the same time it's like, that's such horse shit. Once again, I brought this example up earlier. What about literally in the library? The beast is in the library. You have Scott looking around. There's kids hiding all in the library. Scott went full on against this day. Fighting this thing ended up leading to him getting shredded to pieces. And you're saying he doesn't care about people. All he's ever done is protect people in the town from every bad thing that's supernatural. Because not everything supernatural is a bad thing. It's like, it's such horseshit. And it's sad because it's like even Gerard's admitting certain facts. Did Gerard mention to her the fact is that he killed a kid and took possession of the kingdom of, Jackson back in season 2? I'm sure he admitted that little fact of him doing that. The fact of the matter is, because, in actuality, when you break it down, if she wants to blame him, you could arguably say this all started because of Gerard, because of the fact is that he had his tactics, and his tactics passed down to Kate. Things would not have escalated to the way they did. Scott probably wouldn't be the werewolf that he is right now if it wasn't for things playing out the way they did. If Kate had never attacked Peter and his family, Peter would never probably went on a rampage like he did and ended up eventually biting Scott, which would have led to every supernatural event really happening. So it's like you could probably take it all back to Gerard. He's done plenty of terrible things in his own right too, because they mentioned it too, like him doing what he did to Deucalion and his pack. So it's like Gerard can't pretend like he's innocent in all of this, but it's like it's so messed up that Monroe blames him for everything, because it's like Scott has always done his best to protect this town, but she's like, oh, but you try. And then what I'm going back to what I was saying is the beauty of like how the show is constructed, and the fact is that everyone that's with her are people who've lost someone to this whole supernatural deal. But it's like that's not Scott's fault. Like the supernatural world already existed around them. They just only became aware of it because it affected their own lives personally. It leaked into their lives. So they're just as much arguably victims as anyone else. They just, took that bad situation and they made it into a positive thing. And it's sad that it got twisted around like that. Like I said, it's just because it's a tragic situation where someone is thinking they're doing right. Because it's like, oh, Scott and his people have done nothing but terrible things. It's like they've done nothing but good, but at the same time, it's like, no, because you only tried. You didn't, what about all the countless people they saved? And what about the people they've lost? It's like, oh, I don't see you. Has Gerard even mentioned to you the fact is of how his granddaughter died? His granddaughter died fighting, God, what was it called? It was in season 3, the thing that possessed Nikitsune? The evil fox that had possessed Styles. So it's like your granddaughter died fighting that thing, and she was with the people who were basically her pack. And it's like I feel like I want to know how much Gerard has actually told her. I mean, you got to think something's up because his own son is not siding with him. That should be something to you. But it's like, once again, it's like this thing is amping everyone up. Fear is on the rise and everything. So, and on top of that, like you don't know who to trust because everyone across every board is one. You know, it's part of this group because there's the cop that ends up shooting that werewolf girl at the beginning of the episode. And then during the second half of the episode, you have like that other like deputy who ends up killing those two werewolves from Satomi's pack, which we end up finding out that Satomi's dead, which super sucks. So it's not even just Brett and Lori. You know, Satomi's pack is broken, and I don't know if they're the last two people of her pack, which is kind of cool. It's Brendan. I don't know. I'm probably going to butcher his name. Soho is how I would say it, but I don't know. It's probably pronounced like Suhu. Might be probably the proper pronunciation, so I do apologize, dude. Which is kind of interesting just because, you know, it's From Dusk Till Dawn. He's a vampire in From Dusk Till Dawn. Culebra. And now he's a werewolf. This is kind of cool. Also, really quickly, that Eichen House dude. I vaguely think I know which particular Eichen House dude he was. The one you kind of typically saw, like, anytime it came to Eichen House, he was, like, one of the main people you saw. Which apparently it seems like not everyone in Eichen House is a complete and utter douchebag. Only that, like, doctor dude from an episode or two ago, like, the one that tried to kill all the supernatural things. It seems like he's the only one that's like that. Because, I mean, granted, it seems like they said, almost every supernatural is dead in Eichen House, apparently, because of him, so... And they did say, like, Lydia did say every, so it doesn't seem like there were any survivors, which kind of sucks. But, once again, it's this thing's, like, power, and it's like, the more people are more afraid, the more, because it's pushing people to such extremes, you know, and it's sad, like, but I'm really getting back to it, and it was kind of an interesting moment of, like, okay, these two, like, were part of Satomi's pack, and they have blue eyes. At first, I didn't get it. Liam was like, I gotta show you something. And Scott, like, forces them to show them their eyes, and they're blue. And I'm like, oh, as you know, blue eyes only come up when you've killed someone innocent. And it's like, right. So that means the people they claimed they were killing some, like, the hunters out of self-defense, but it's like, no, they killed them outright. And for them, like, you know, even the girl, she was like, they killed our pack. Like, who cares whether they were innocent or not? Like, are they any more innocent than us or something like that? And it's put Scott in a hard position, and it put everyone in a hard position because you have Stilinski being like, yeah, they needed to be locked up, but then Scott's like, well, I was out of self-defense, but that changed the moment he found it wasn't self-defense because he's like, I don't know, they killed him, but then you know you have, and it's something that Malia says, and it's something that Stilinski says too. It's like, this is war, and so it's like, yes, at the end of the day, it's hard. You can't always say, like, you know, there are casualties on both sides when it comes to a war. You can't always, you know, there are moments where it's like bodies drop in war, and the fact of the matter is you can't always, the shades of gray expand when it comes to, like, what is in self-defense and what's innocent and what's innocent blood being spilled and what's not, you know, in that whole situation. So it's so disheartening that it has come down to this, because Scott doesn't want a war. He wants everyone to walk away with this, from this okay, but Monroe is pushing it more and more. And then once again, though, like, it is all a symptom. Everything that's happening with Monroe, what's happening at the school, even had Nolan. Interestingly enough, Nolan actually knew one of the werewolves that he was actually sent there to kill, but Liam stopped him. And it sucks that they still, like I said, still got killed in the end anyway. Just because, once again, you don't know who to trust in this whole situation. So I guess arguably, like, it does make you wonder. Now I'm sitting here thinking about it. What is that? Like, what state is this shapeshifter in now? Because the moment, like, you had Parrish dealing with it, like, he saw the body, he ran up to it, and he ignited himself and it on fire. So it body is charred, but, you know, its effects are still there. We never actually saw the body popping up. We just saw the fear kind of take over everyone. So maybe it doesn't have a tangible body anymore. I don't know, because, like, you had those two deputies ended up killing themselves in this episode just because they were kind of driven to it. I mean, granted, one of them wasn't exactly a good person just because of, like, tried to kill that girl at the beginning of the first episode. So it's kind of like, I can say it's sad. Like, it's sad, but, like, it's so ingenious how it's constructed like that. How, like, everything is, like, feeding upon itself. That the fact of the matter is, all the good Scott and them have tried to do over the years has basically come back to bite them in the ass in the final chapter. And they're dealing with an enemy that basically is like, how do you fight something like this? Fight something that instills fear in everyone. And in the way Dee was kind of explaining it, it's saying it's like it has two faces, which then kind of begs the question like, so you're saying this is one thing with two faces, or are we saying this is two different people? He describes it as two creatures, and when they come together, they'll become whole again, and in fact will become very, very powerful, almost probably unstoppable, which then begs the question, who are the two faces? We've seen one. I mean, now it kind of doesn't have a face anymore. Part of me wonders, is it Gerard? Because he's the one kind of hiding, like kicking up the hunters in this whole situation. And it's kind of interesting. Argent kind of points out something interesting too, because he's like, yeah, this is also because why Gerard wants to wipe them all out in particular. I mean, it's genocide in general, but definitely Scott, his pack, because he blames Scott and his pack for everything. It's like, probably blames them for Allison's death, definitely blames them for what Kate is now. The fact is that Argent, like, you know, his own son isn't on his side anymore too. So it's a combination of all that basically his family's in shambles because of Scott. I mean, granted, your family's in shambles because you're a piece of crap who's on multiple occasions tried to screw them over. Perfect example, season two, as well as season 5, where he tried to, you know, do his thing again, but, you know, Argent stopped him. So I did like the conversation of Argent's like, maybe, and Malia's like, well, maybe you should have killed him. And then you had Argent being like, maybe I should have. What did catch me by surprise was when we had Scott's dad showing up. I was like, dude, what's up with this? I mean, it seems like he knows now. Because like the last time he popped up was like the first half of season 3. And even then, I don't think he knew. I don't think he ever saw Scott like transform. Like obviously that like at that point Melissa knew because she found out like season 2. But it's like, I don't remember if his dad ever like saw, but it seems like his dad knows because it's like, yo, you and your friends need to get out of state. You know, Sheriff Stilinski had called him just because he needed some kind of help in this whole situation. It's a situation that's screwed on all fronts. And now you have people like Nolan as well as his people kind of being brought into this Hunter game too. And it seems like he has his own reservations about it too, to certain degrees, because, you know, you have Monroe pushing him to be like, okay, I need you to do something. Like basically, okay, you kind of failed this time, but to make sure that you will do it, I'm gonna need you to do something for me. So I guess she needs him to make sure he kills someone. She's basically like, it'll get easier every time. And it's like, dude, that's such a shame. Once again, they did the right thing. That was something well beyond their control. Like if you want to blame anyone, blame the Dread Doctors, and if anything, they're not even supernatural. I'm pretty sure the Dread Doctors were basically people who just kind of increased their longevity, and then that basically they ended up summoning a creature meant for genocide. It's like, how are you going to blame Scott and them for that? A mass murdering supernatural beast from like centuries ago. How are you going to blame them for that? Right? Like, but once again, it's a combination of like, everyone's being a little illogical, plus the fact this whole thing pumping everyone full of fear. So, and once again, I put that statement out there. It is supernatural. It's not even just werewolves. You're even going after Lydia. What do banshees do? They announce death, and she's even like, you know, even Lydia's on the list. It's like, what do banshees do? They announce death. I mean, I don't know. That's super unfair. Like, and the fact of the matter is, Scott and his pack have never done anything bad. You can see it in their eyes, literally in their eyes. They've never actually hurt anyone, and even Malia's. And I guess that kind of feeds into the whole situation of what Stilinski said of when it comes to innocent people. Like, you know, look at Malia. Malia blames herself for her family's death, and it's like, honestly, that was a complete another accident. But you look at her eyes; she has blue eyes, but that doesn't reflect the situation. You know, it was an accident. So, but you know, it's that same situation. I mean, it's like Derek. Derek got his blue eyes out of a terrible situation as well. So it's like, you know, there are shades of different situations. I mean, granted, those two werewolves, their situation was a little different, but it was a fight or flight type of situation of them being hunted and their family being killed. So it seems like maybe Nolan might be having reservations, like I was saying earlier, but I don't know. It seems like he's still going full all the way through with this whole situation, and I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting going forward to see how this whole situation unfolds. I'm curious what Scott's dad going to do when he ends up finding out that Scott and them didn't leave town like they wanted to. I feel bad for Mason because Mason was like the last one to know, because it's like, yeah, we had to make everyone, including Scott's dad, think they all left town, you know. For one, it would have made a difference. It's like, even if they left the state, they would have been hunted. Like I said, Monroe literally said it herself. They can run, she will find them anyway. Even though they've done it's so frustrating. It's like, you're the heroes in the story and you get treated like villains just because of what you are. Monster or no monster, you've done nothing but help people. And everyone in this town should be grateful for it. It's like, you know, you've kept a lot of people alive, but it's like, it's all about the people they didn't save. It's like, oh, because you didn't, because you tried, people died. It doesn't matter that you tried. It's because they tried, more people didn't die. So get bent on that, you know? It's just like, And also, side note, we do see the continuation of like the whole Malia and Scott thing. You know, she's like, it's a trap, you know, and Scott's like, well, even if it is, like, I know that you guys can handle this on, you know, I have faith that you guys could handle this without me. And he's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? She's like, I don't know. He's like, I'm confused. And she's kind of like, I'm confused too. It's kind of adorable, and I like that. I like that that's what's happening there. That like that's becoming a thing. So, caught a preview of something else, kind of a future episode. I would assume it's the next episode, where it's kind of like alluding to like, oh, much more of that kind of building up. So I almost completely forgot about the fact that Theo was in this episode, and he's kind of reluctantly joining on all of this stuff too. I'm very curious to see where Theo ends up at the end of all of this. Like, you know, it's like, it seems like this might be his path to redemption for all the bad stuff that he's ever done. I did like the fact that Liam punched him and he's like, just to let you know, I'm still working on my anger issues. And then Theo's like, thanks for letting me know. But things are going to get very interesting. I'm very interested, like, especially because, like, it's like, you know, Scott has no choice in all of this. So it's like, I'm very interested to see how they handle this whole creature from the Wild Hunt thing plus the hunters, and see like how this all, I mean, it's going to be crazy to see how this all plays out. Do know that there is no episode next week. There will be an episode the week after next. You know, next week's like the MTV Movie Awards. So if you didn't know, just letting you know that now. So I guess that's why they aired a second episode this week, to kind of compensate for the fact is that there won't be one next week. So I don't know. Either way, I really appreciate it. So, and now moving on to this week's episode of Twin Peaks. A lot of interesting things that went down in this episode, so let's break everything down. For one, you have the whole Nadine and Ed situation of like her like admitting a lot of interesting things, like, oh, I've been manipulating you, I've been kind of forcing you to stay with me. I've known for the longest time that you've always loved Norma and she loves you. And she's like, I'm letting you go. You know, what it means to really love someone is to let them be happy, put their happiness first. So I was like, okay, yeah, it's weird that it's coming out of nowhere. It seems like it's because of this whole like show that Jacoby does, that she's kind of doing this, and she's like, I'm finally like shoveling myself out of the shit. She even walked to him to get there, and he's like, it's like, where's your car? She's like, I walked her way here. You're like, what? And have Ed being so forget. He's like, no, tomorrow you're just gonna regret. She's like, no, I walked here, so I thought it through. Oh, Ed, I'm happy for you. The thought of you being happy makes me happy. And I'm like, oh, what? And then you have like Ed being like taking it and running with it, and he goes to Norma, but Norma's like, well, wait, Walter's here. She talks to Walter and telling Walter, yeah, get the hell out. I would assume she's always was going to do that anyway, but maybe Ed being there kind of incentivized her even more to, hey, let's do it. It's even more so the perfect time, because she says she has to do it for her family. What she said, I thought she didn't have any family, which is like, she does. We met her mom in the series as well as her sister Annie. So, I don't know where that stands in the confines of the show or not. But she basically told Walter, like, she'll keep the double R, but every other franchise of the double R, like, he can buy her out when it comes to the franchise. She'll keep just this double R here and Twin Peaks, and he can do what he wants. And he's like, oh, you're making a big, you'll regret this. So I'm like, okay, what does that mean? As it means, it don't tell me you're going to come back and cause some problems for her and Ed, since now that they're together. Which, can we finally say, finally? It took you forever. It's not even just the 20-some years between the original Twin Peaks show and this, show. It's not even just that. There's also, like, they've been sweethearts since, like, high school. But it's like, he got married to Nadine, she got married to Hank, and then just the whole tryst they had, like, over the course of the series, sneaking behind each other's back. But then, like, Nadine had that whole situation where she regressed and thought she was a teenager again. And it's like, oh, they could be together then. But then it kind of backlashed because of the whole, like, Nadine going back to the way she was. It's been a long time coming. It's like, oh, you're finally together again. Which makes me think Walter in some shape or form is going to come back to screw that over, just because it's like it's impossible for you guys to be happy, because it's such a long standing, like, it's one of those examples of just get together already. You're in love with each other. You've always been in love with each other. It's just circumstances always kept you guys from just doing what you want to do and be happy. What about, and it's something Norma brought up in the series at the beginning, like, the original series, of being like, what about our happiness? Why can't we just do what we want, for once? So that was kind of neat. And I did like Shelly just kind of being like, oh, because I like before, like, Ed just walks up and Shelly's like, what do you want? He's like, coffee. And she walks away. He's like, and a cyanide tablet. And I love the entire time. It's like, it's only music when it comes to Ed. Like, when the camera shifts to Ed, it cuts back to, like, Norma and Walter talking, and there's no music. And it's just only when Ed, and he's closing his eyes and everything. So that was kind of a beautiful thing. Really quickly, I'm going to throw this in there with this because I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm not sure, because I don't, I try to skip over the credits and stuff like that for my little reasons why I do it. Still ended up seeing them anyway. Was it that Alicia Witt was Steven in the forest, in the woods? Wasn't that Alicia Witt? Which is interesting because Alicia Witt, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right. It might be Alicia. I would say Alicia, but I don't know. Yeah, I think it is like Alicia. Either way, Miss Witt, if you don't remember, played Donna's youngest sister. She was literally in one episode in the original series, which begs the question, so is that her reprising that role? Is that her playing as someone else? Or am I just being an idiot and that's just someone that looked awfully lot like her? That looked like it was her, but I could be 100% wrong. Just like I'm not sure if that girl at the end of the episode was Charlene Yee or not. That looked a hell of a lot like Charlene Yee, but I could be completely wrong. The girl with the glasses that was crawling on the floor at the end of the episode screaming. I think that was her, but once again, I could be a complete idiot. Kind of going ahead and diving into it because it's slightly depressing. I kind of want to go ahead and get over it, get it like there and just not end on a sad note. It does seem like the actress who played Margaret died. It seems like, because over the course so far we've seen like her character is sick, it seems, in some shape or form. So I was thinking like that meant the actress herself. So it's probably like a situation of all that was probably filmed at once, probably not over the course of like some time of filming. It's like all her scenes were probably filmed over the course. Maybe. I don't, because I don't even know the actress's name. So I don't know if that was them saying, because it might be the fact is that the actress is, because in the end credits is in loving memory of Margaret, and the last name I didn't quite catch it. So I don't know whether that's the actress who actually just shares the same who shares the same name as Margaret, or are they just saying goodbye to the character? I'm a combination of both of her like talking to Hulk and saying like, essentially how there's that little bit of fear, but death isn't an ending, it's just a change, so. And for Hulk to remember what they've talked about before when they last saw each other face to face. I don't know if that's something that's like in between the series face to face or within the confines of the original series face to face the last time they saw each other. She even talked about her log turning gold, which makes me think, is that some kind of Jacoby reference? Because the fact that he turned shovels gold, does that mean eventually her log will get turned into gold? Is that something that's going to happen later on in the sense of like he does that in tribute to her? Or is it just something like, oh, he somehow gets her log and accidentally turns it gold or something? I don't know. And she also talked about a man under the moon. Don't know what that's referencing either. Like a lot of the stuff she said, the Hulk was very cryptic, but it seemed like it led to him to certain things. So maybe that'll lead to something too. Also in the episode, we had Cooper, Doppelganger Cooper, specifically visiting that convenience store, like where those shadowy guys reside. And he went in there and basically ended up talking to Philip Jeffries. And Jeffries kind of talked about, it kind of referenced like him talking about a Judy, and it's like, what Judy are you talking about? And is Judy, he's like, because basically in the flashback it was like, I'm not going to talk about Judy. And Cooper's like, Judy, who is Judy and what does she want from me? And it's like, don't know. Is she behind why Jeffrey sent Ray after him? Because still don't have an answer. It seems like Judy might be the reason why, but we don't know who the hell Judy is. When he got the phone call, he ended up getting sucked out of the place, and then we do see it disappearing. I was thinking that place was Twin Peaks like past, but it's like, is that not the case? Because I was like, you know, that episode where it's like, oh yeah, a lot of weird stuff happening, and it's like everything in the episode was almost up in the interpretation for you. So I was like, so that isn't like the gas station that Ed works at just in the past or something like that, or is it? Is it like supposed to be like a almost like a Stranger Things type of thing where it's like the upside down world? So it's like it's the like Black Lodge equivalent of that world. I mean, it ended like of that convenience store because it ended up disappearing afterwards. I also appreciate the fact is that Richard showed up with a gun towards Cooper. I mean, the reason why he did, I was like, why did you do that? It's like, okay, well, he thinks Cooper's FBI, so he's like, oh, you're fed and everything. And then like Cooper kicked his ass and was like, hey, get in the car. Oh, you're Audrey's son? Get in the car, you idiot. So it's like, I mean, I assume he's still heading to Twin Peaks as the goal. He texts Las Vegas question mark to somebody, and I assume it's the assassins because they take care of Todd as well as his dude. Todd got it the hardest because it hit his head and it like exploded like a fraction of his head, and the other dude kind of, you could hear him wheezing, and then the lady had to come back in and deal the next shot, which is so interesting when you go cut back to her and her husband, because it's like they're enjoying food and stuff like that and just talking about the weirdest thing. It's just like, oh, did you get me dessert? It's like, you know, I got you. Just like, oh, I love you, honey. I love you too. Oh, we're lovable psychopaths. And then you had the real Cooper shocking himself by putting like his fork inside of an electric socket. I can only assume that's supposed to be everything lining up to eventually make it so that he like, maybe he wakes up from it, it like jolts his brain and he becomes Cooper again. Maybe that's what they're setting that up. They're like, yep, and now he's Cooper again. All the little pieces have lined up to kind of make his personality already there. The coffee, the cherry pie, the being obsessed with badges and stuff like that. You know, all that correlation has come together, and now he's ready to be Cooper again. 100%. I don't know. Or maybe that's just going to put him in a position to be in a hospital for someone to recognize him. You know, the moment he ends up in the hospital, maybe it starts raising red flags all over the place at the South Dakota. Was it the South Dakota? Yeah, the Las Vegas. God, get it right. The Las Vegas branch of the FBI, or which would eventually give Gordon and them's attention. You know, maybe that's what that's supposed to be. And then you had the whole situation with Freddie and James. James was talking to Renee. Her husband was there and kicked his ass a little bit, as well as his friend. And then, like, Freddie punches both the friend as well as Renee's husband. And they're both, like, in intensive care. They got locked up, which makes me go, is that supposed to happen? So it's supposed to put Freddie in a position so he can talk to whoever he needs to talk to in this whole weird situation? I don't know. That's the thing. There's so many possibilities. You don't know what's connected to what at what point, you know? Like, it's just all some cosmic thing to put Freddy where he needs to be, because he's supposed to have the glove and come to Twin Peaks. It's supposed to be his destiny and everything, you know? So, well, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, wasn't their next target supposed to be Dougie? Like, that couple? Wasn't their next target supposed to be Dougie? So now I'm thinking about it, maybe that was to get Dougie and, Janie as well as Sonny Jim like all out of the house while the assassination attempt is made on them, or maybe it puts them in a position to try and kill Dougie in a public place, and then they could get exposed, or he ends up taking it down in a public place. I don't know. That's kind of another place to think of, because I forgot who else they were supposed to, because they're like, oh, we got one more, because I know they're supposed to take out the warden, and now they're taking out Todd and the guy that's associated with the guy that knows everything that was with him. So those are out, but they were like, we got one more, so I would assume it's supposed to be Dougie. And also, that's another thing too, the FBI picked up the wrong Dougie this episode. And then there's also the whole situation with Audrey and Charlie, which don't understand that, like, they're about to walk out the door. She's like, oh, you got your coat on. It's like, we're going to the roadhouse, right? I need to put my coat on. Like, put your coat on. She's like, yeah. Oh, you do? You can't ever just do anything good for somebody. You just have to sit here and complain. He's like, you keep doing this, complaining, I'm just going to take my damn jacket off. And he decides to just take his jacket off, and it pisses Audrey off even more, because she's basically like, oh, the reason why I like Billy more is because Billy ends up taking me places. Well, he's like, well, I'm Charlie and Billy's Billy. And then she's like, well, she was so pissed out, she started choking him, and it's just like, what? Like, cursing at him and everything. It's like, okay, I have no idea what they're planning to do with the whole Audrey situation. And I mean, obviously they're tying in the whole Richard thing, because it's like, yeah, Richard's like, yeah, that's my mom. Obviously, like, already establishing it's out there. Yep, that's 100% her son, which begs the question, who's the dad in that whole situation, and why is Richard such a piece of shit? So many questions. I literally have it's another one of those episodes where it's like there's progression, but it's like you don't know in what direction, especially the whole Steven and that lady situation. Don't know what that was all about. It's like, I did it, and it's like, no, she did it. It's like, wait, what? I missed a lot of that. It didn't register in my brain. I think it's mainly because the entire time I was like, is that Alicia Witt? Is it not? And I think I was so caught up in that I just couldn't, it didn't register in my head, like, what exactly that whole situation about. I know Carl, isn't that the dude's name? Who lives in the trailer park? He's going to get involved because the dude who was walking his dog ended up talking to Carl about it. So it's like, what are they in the woods for? What are they tripping about? What's going on here? And if that is like Alicia Witt, then it's like, yo, does that mean we're meeting Donna anytime soon? Considering the fact is that is like her youngest sister. And how is this going to tie in with Becky? Because Becky last time was like, yeah, I haven't seen Steven for like 2 days. And now he pops up here and it's like, I have no idea what's going on in that regard. Not even sure why. I mean, I don't know. I'm just going to leave that there. I was about to say something else, but I was like, drop it. The show is fucking weird. It's like anytime it's like, why the show is weird, but why the show is weird. And just leave it at that until like something's like, yeah, the show is weird, but also blank reason. So, I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode with all these new developments. I mean, especially, I think the biggest thing is the fact is that Mr. Dodd, as well as his associate, are dead because the whole thing was about getting Anthony to turn state's evidence against him, and like Dougie's whole part in it, which kind of goes back to the thing of like, I think he's next on the list in this whole situation. I'm also curious to see what goes down with Doppelganger Cooper now that he's with Richard, and that can't be a coincidence because you're with Audrey's son. So it's like, are you heading to Twin Peaks or are you going to head to Las Vegas because you need to make sure everything kind of went all hunky-dory, Which now that I think about it, why was Richard able to show up at that place? Was he able to see the convenience store the entire time? I mean, he just happened to come, like, hit Doppelganger Cooper when he had left, like, was starting to leave. So it's like, maybe Richard didn't see anything, and maybe what we saw was only what Doppelganger Cooper had seen. I don't know. There's so many possibilities and so many different directions this could all take. So, like I said, I'm very interested to see how it all goes, what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about for this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.